Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at elitheComputerGuy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to elitheComputerGuy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class, I'm going to be showing you how to create a dynamic photo gallery. So basically, this is going to be a follow-on class to the dynamic photo stream gallery that we created in the previous project. And basically, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be showing all of the pictures within a certain folder in like a gallery. So, you know, columns and rows, basically a whole bunch of thumbnails. And then what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to click on one of those thumbnails, and then that image will open up into its own page and it will be much larger. Then beyond that, there will be a link at the bottom where you can click to go back to the gallery. And so this will show you how to create basically a very simple PHP gallery app. Now, in order to do what we're going to be doing today, we're going to continue using the Glob function in PHP. So the coding languages that we're using for this particular class is we're going to be using HTML, CSS, and PHP. So with PHP, we're going to be using something called the Glob function. The Glob function allows you to basically scan through a folder, and anything that matches what you give it, it will then turn into an array. We then use the for each function to step through the array and then be able to dynamically write out HTML code. So in the previous class that we did, basically we used the Glob function to look in the pics folder, basically grab all of the file names out of the pics folder, and then use the img src tag in HTML to be able to then present those images in a photo stream. What we're going to be doing today is a little bit different, a lot the same, but slightly different. Basically what's going to happen is when we step through the array and we're printing out the images, this time we're going to be printing out the images being small. So using CSS, the images are going to be small. And then one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to use the get function in PHP. So when you click on an image, what we're going to do is we're going to make each image an actual hyperlink. When you click on the image, it will then send the name of the image to a script, and that other script will then print out a dynamic web page with the large image file for you. So basically today, what we're going to be dealing with is Glob, the Glob function, the for each function, and then basically being able to use the get function to actually acquire information and be able to dynamically create a web page based off of that. Beyond that, there's going to be a little bit of curious CSS in what we're going to be doing today. So when you hover over an image in the gallery view, basically we'll make the border of that image gray, just so you can see that when you're hovering over an image, you know what image you're hovering over before you click on it. And then the other interesting thing that we're going to do is when you click and you actually go to see the larger image, if you hover over the larger image, we'll actually expand it up and make it even bigger. So this is to simulate, let's say if you wanted to have your users to have the ability to zoom in on an image and see a smaller area and make it bigger so that it's easier for them to view. So these are the things that we're going to be doing today with this particular project, and it's one of those things. It may sound a little complicated, but I'm going to give you all of the code so you can take a look at it and you'll see how simple it is to code a project like this. Now, the only real warning for today's class is just like the previous class with creating the photo stream. Do remember that when you create the pics folder, basically when you create the folder for where you're going to be storing the images, that everybody or other has to have read permission on that folder. So one of the problems you can run into in the PHP world is the script, the Glob function, has the authority, has the ability to read all of the files in a particular folder, but then when you try to use HTML and then print out those images in an HTML document, if the viewer, if the user does not have permission to actually see those images, then those images will not show up in the HTML document. So I think that's really the only warning today. You do need to know a little bit about Linux administration in order to make this project work beyond the code and everything that I'm going to be giving you. Now, I've done nothing special with PHP INI or any other configurations on my server. So basically, I have an Ubuntu 18.04 server that I'll be demonstrating everything on today. I use something called Task Cell just to throw in a vanilla version of the LAMP stack, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So that's all I did. There are no configurations on the PHP INI file or anything like that. Why that's important is if you want to try these projects using a shared hosting plan, so something off of GoDaddy or HostGator or something like that, all of the code that I'm showing you today should work just fine, basically within any LAMP web server that you're going to be throwing it into. So with that, let's go over to the computer. The first thing that I'll do is I'll show you the demonstration of what we're going to be creating, and then we'll kind of step through and talk about the code, about how we actually create it. So here we are at my normal demonstration computer. Again, this is a MacBook Pro, but all I am using this demonstration computer for today is simply to use the web browser to actually access the website on my server. So again, I've created a LAMP server, that Ubuntu server. The IP address for that Ubuntu server is 10.0.1.17. And so what I'm doing is I'm using this demonstration computer in order to access that web server, and then this is what is being presented to me. And so this is the project that we're going to be creating today. So again, I created a folder, and all I did was dump picture files into the folder. So there's no additional configurations I've done for the picture files. Literally, they're just simply JPEG picture files I dumped into the folder, and then PHP has then dynamically created these pages for me. So we can take a look here, and we can see these are all the different pictures that are in the particular folder. And as I was saying before, basically when I hover over an image, I'm having the CSS, basically the CSS is :hover. So when I hover over an image, I am making the border gray, so I know what image I'm hovering over. Now with this, basically I've tried to center this gallery in the middle. Now one of the things that I did around the whole div is actually to put this black line, just to give you an example. So this is a border, just to kind of show you how like centering things can be a little bit wonky in a responsive world. Because what this is going to try to do is it's always going to try to center this image gallery in the middle of the web browser, but these images have a width on their own. So one of the issues you get into is when you're in the area when it can't present another image because the area is too small, that's when the border starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, so here, see how it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then boom. Right? So right here, right now, all of the images are perfectly centered in the middle of the screen. So this gallery is perfectly centered. But when I do that, now the images no longer are. So this is just kind of one of those things you're going to have to be thinking about when you deal with responsive websites. The problem is when you put elements into an HTML form of a certain size, when you go to resize the web browser where people are viewing the gallery or whatever you've created, you can get into these weird things about the images not being centered the way that you think they are. So that's just one of those random things to kind of keep in mind. So again, basically this is the gallery you have, and then let's say I want to look at this particular image here. So what happens here is basically with PHP, I've dynamically created this page, and it's dynamically used the img tag in order to put all of these images on the page. Then what I've also done is I've turned the images into a hyperlink. Not only have I turned them into a hyperlink, but I turned the images into a hyperlink with the get. So basically with get, what you're able to do is you're actually able to send variables to another script within the URL itself. So I have the hyperlink here. The hyperlink points to the script that I've created with the variable of the name of this particular picture, so that when I click on this picture, it then will dynamically create this web page with this picture on it, and it will be larger. So basically with the get function, that's how the PHP script knows what image to make larger. Now one of the things that I've done with CSS is, as you can see here, when my mouse is over on the side, we get the image of whatever size I've decided. But if I want to then zoom in, what I can do is simply by hovering over the image, we now see that the image gets a lot larger. So again, think about this as like a zoom in function, a very, very, primitive zoom in function, but that's the idea. So basically I can be sitting here going, oh, that's a nice image. What's that thing around Jesus's head? And then I can simply scroll over and I can take a look and go, oh, that's a halo or whatnot, right? And again, this is the type of thing that you need to be thinking about for your users. Maybe your users will find this obnoxious. Maybe your users would find this useful. That's kind of one of those things. You can code it and then ask them what they think. Then the final thing that I did here is, again, whenever you're creating a web application, you don't want to have dead ends in your web application. That can be one of the big problems when new people are creating web applications. They just assume everybody will hit the back button, right? Oh, okay, I saw this image, now I want to go back, and they hit the back button. One of the things when you're creating these kind of web applications is you always want to have links to get people to the next place in the process. So with this, since it's just an image gallery, all I want is to simply go back to the gallery they were at. So I can click on that, and that brings me back to the gallery. Then I can come here, I can take a look at that. I can look at the guy's big nose, and then I can go back to the gallery. I can go here and take a look at the cat, and oh, look at that cute little cat. And then I can go back to the gallery. So this is what we're going to be creating today with the code that's on the other server. So let's go over and take a look at the server and take a look at the code so that you understand how this works. So here we are on my Ubuntu server. So I'm using Ubuntu Desktop 18.04 LTS, but basically any Ubuntu version should work for you. Really, any Linux distribution should work for you. Now, the important thing to understand with this is you can build the server. You can, and you probably should, run all of this code off of a command line server without a GUI, without a graphical user interface. Please understand, because I am trying to teach you how this stuff actually works, I am using a graphical user interface just because it's easier to visualize some of the things that I'm trying to explain to you. When I'm trying to show you the file structure, when I'm trying to show you some other things, it's easier when I have a GUI versus simply trying to type through the command line. So that's just something to keep in mind there. So basically, with this little web application that we've created, we have a few things. So basically, we have 3 files here. So we have the index.php file. So when you go to the Apache web server, it will by default look for a file either called index.php, index.htm, index.html, or default.htm or default.html. So basically, this is just simply, this is just coded into Apache. If you have a file called index.php, index.html, it will automatically drop your visitors into that file. So this is the main file here. Past that, again, in the index.php file, when I create the hyperlink, that href, when I create that, again, there are going to be variables within that href, and those are then going to get passed to the gallery script.php. So this here is when you get dumped into the website and you're seeing the gallery. The gallery is created by the index.php file. Then in order to get that large image with the hyperlink below, that's created by the gallery script.php file. Beyond that, we have a pickstyle.css. So this is our style sheet that all the divs, what size the images should be, so on and so forth. And then finally, we have the picture folder. And again, it is important to understand, all I literally did is copy and pasted these images into the folder, and then PHP does the rest. There's no manual configurations or anything that I have to do. Now, the important thing with this particular folder is it does have to be accessible to the public. So if we're in the GUI world, we can simply right click and then we go to permissions. What you want to see here if you're dealing with a graphical user interface is that others have access files. Essentially, access files is the read permission, so you need to make sure that users have the read permission. Sometimes if you create this particular folder, it will not automatically give the read permission to everybody, essentially, and so everybody needs that. Not only that, but everybody also needs to have read permission on the actual files themselves. So you go into properties, again, you take a look at permission. Here, basically, we have that read-only permission. So that's something that you're going to have to be looking at. So past that, we can then actually get to the code itself. So here's the index.php file. Then we have the gallery script.php, and then finally we'll go to the pickstyle.css. So the index.php, now with this, basically we start with the HTML, we end with the HTML, and right in the middle, we basically dump our PHP script in here. This makes life easier for us. So we can see HTML head. The first thing up here is that we do want to link to a style sheet, and we're going to be linking to that pickstyle.css. So again, all of the formatting comes from pickstyle.css. It's very important that you do that. The other thing that we're going to do here is we're actually going to open up the div outside of the PHP. So basically when you saw that big square box, that box with the black border, that is the div. And I'm actually opening that up outside the PHP because there's no reason to actually put that inside the PHP. So basically everything that the PHP script is going to be printed out will be within that div anyway. So I'll just leave that outside the PHP. And for this, I've just simply put it as a class of gallery div. And that makes it centered, that gives it the border. Again, that gives us all the formatting. Then past that, what we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to open up our PHP script. So we open up the PHP here and we close the PHP here. The first thing that we need to do is we're going to need to create the array that we're going to be stepping through, and we need to fill that array with all of the files in the pics folder. So this is where we use that glob function. So again, what the glob function does is it steps through a folder. It takes all the file names that match whatever pattern you give it, and then it puts it into an array. So basically what we do here is we do glob, parentheses, double quotations, and then basically what we're saying here is go into the pics folder, and for this, we're simply doing star. So star is a wildcard. Star means absolutely everything. So basically everything in the pics folder, grab those file names and put it into an array called file list. So again, with glob, you could do like star.jpg. Or you could do star.jpeg, right? So you could do this if you wanted to. You could even do star.txt if your particular project required that. The problem, like again, when you're dealing with things like images, is do you remember what the extension is? Are they JPEG files or JPEG files or PNG files? See, if I know all of the files in the folder are images, then if I do star here, it doesn't matter if they're PNG or JPEG, JPG or JPEG, it'll grab all the files, it'll simply print it out. So that's one of the things, again, you have to be thinking about with your particular situation. If you know all the files in that folder are supposed to be JPEG as in JPEG, then you could put that in there. Again, especially since it's a demonstration machine, I'm not exactly sure what files I'm putting in there. So by doing star, that means basically grab the file names for literally everything within the folder. Then we're going to come down to the for each function. And so what the for each function does, it allows you to basically step through an array and for every value in that array, do something. So basically, all of the files in the pics folder, the file names have been put into the array called file list. And now we're going to use for each to step through then all of those file names and do something. So for this, basically what you do is you take file list, right, this array, and then as file name. So we need a unique variable name so that we can actually interact with it. So basically for every value in the array, for this particular iteration, that value will now be the value for file name for the variable, and then we're going to step through and we're going to do something. So what we're going to do here is we're simply going to echo. So basically we're going to print out on the screen. We're going to open up the double quotation marks, and to be clear, when you're looking at this is a mess. This is a mess of quotation marks. So many quotation marks in here. The reason there's so many quotation marks in here is because if you take a look at these image files, you'll notice there's a space. So all of these pictures are from my trip to Turkey. I simply exported them out of iPhotos in order to do this project. Well, when I exported them out of iPhotos, it does Turkey space 043. Turkey space 044, Turkey space 048, right? So remember, when you're doing things like hyperlinks and all that kind of stuff, if there's just a space in the file name, you're going to have a whole bunch of problems if you don't use quotation marks, right? When you use single or double quotation marks, what it says is read this entire string as if it's one file name. If you don't put either a single or double quotation mark around a file name that has a space in the middle, then you're going to run into problems. And so since I'm actually having to print everything out, that's why we get into so many of these double quotation marks. So basically what we have here is we have a double quotation mark here and we have a double quotation mark here. And then we have a single quotation mark here. So what we're doing here is we're creating a hyperlink. So a href, we're creating the hyperlink. And then, because in the file name, we know that there's going to be a space in the middle, basically what we have to do is we have to put a single quotation mark. So what the single quotation mark will go from here to here. And basically, it will read everything as one unit. It won't worry about the spaces. So the double quotation mark is here. So basically, double quotation mark all the way here. And then we're going to concatenate in the value of the variable. So we do a period. And then here we do file name. So basically, file name. Then we do period. We then reopen a double quotation mark all the way to here. And then what we're doing is we're closing the single quotation mark for here. So the single quotation marks, so when we're taking a look at it, this is what the single quotation marks are encompassing. Whereas this is what the double quotation marks are encompassing. And this is one of those things, like I said, it can get a bit confusing. Then beyond that, so basically this is the hyperlink right there. So this is a href, and then what we're saying is go to the gallery script.php. So basically go to the gallery script.php, give a variable and a value. So the variable name is picture. So the variable name picture equals, and then whatever the file name is, right? So then in that gallery script, you're then able to grab the value of that picture name and do something with it. So that's how this hyperlink works right here. And again, if you need to learn a little bit more about Git, it's a pretty useful thing. You can do some more research on it. Past that, we are then going to then actually embed the image itself. So img class equals, and so I created a class called gallery pick. So this is in single quotation marks. So this is one of those things you have to remember too, is so whenever you're printing out quotation marks in any of these kind of scripts, so whenever you have a double quotation mark, the next time you have a double quotation mark, that's going to close everything, right? So what you do is you can either put all of this in a single quotation mark or all of this in a double quotation mark. So you use the different ones, right? So double quotation mark is here. So if I need to use quotation marks again within whatever I'm printing out in the script, I would use the single quotation mark. So here for class, so since this is within double quotation marks, when I do the class for gallery pick, I will put that within single quotation marks so that I don't escape out of the double quotation marks. Oh, that's a whole bunch of words right there. So image, then we get past that. So it's src equal. So basically, what is the image file? Again, we have to use that single quotation mark here because there is going to be a space in the name, right? So all of this gets encapsulated within the single quotation mark. And then we have to put in the file name. So period, $file name, period. So that concatenates in, that adds the file name. And then finally, we're then going to close out the image, and then we are going to close out we're going to close out the hyperlink, and then we're going to end the echo. That's the PHP delimiter there. Then we're going to close out the function, and then we're going to close out the PHP. This mess right here, it's one of those things. Like once you figure it out, once you understand this mess, it'll make a lot of sense, and it's not too bad. It's one of those things, play with. This is one of those things. In order for you to understand, you will have to play with a bit. I can sit here and talk for 30 minutes. And again, if you don't understand it, you don't understand it. Go play with it. So anyways, past that. So again, so when you click on that hyperlink, we're going to go to the gallery script. And we're going to create a value for a variable called picture. And that value will be the file name. If we go over, take a look at the gallery script, we can take a look at this. Now, again, with this, We open with the HTML, we close with the HTML, and in the middle we have the PHP, like we did in the previous thing. Here, again, we're linking to a style sheet, and we're still linking to that pickstyle.css. That's right there for you. And then we're going to go down to PHP. So for PHP, this is going to be the PHP script. And so we're going to create a variable called image, and we are going to set the value of that new variable to whatever comes through in the get. So we're using the get function for the value of picture. All right, so we take a look here. Oh, and we see this value of picture here. Basically, that value is coming here, and then we're setting the value of image to whatever that is, right? So this, you can name this whatever you want. You can name it pick, but then it has to be named pick here. You could name it image, whatever else, and basically when it comes through, it grabs whatever that variable name is set equal to, and then you can now use that as a variable value within your PHP script. Then past that, all I've done here is I've simply echoed out, and with this, again, a whole bunch of quotation marks here, but basically all I'm doing is image, img. We're going to do a class of big pick, so I have a different class here for the image. If we go back and we take a look at the image here, we have gallery pick. So gallery pick creates those small thumbnails in CSS. Big pick creates the big pictures in CSS. Then we're going to do the src equals, and again, whatever the value of image is. Then we're going to simply close all of that out, close out the echo, close out the PHP, and then finally at the bottom, basically in standard old HTML, I have simply created a link to the gallery. I've put some CSS styling directly on this page. Basically, it's called inline CSS styling, just to center it on the page. And so basically H1, center this text in the middle of the page, create a hyperlink that goes back to index.php. That hyperlink will be called gallery, close hyperlink, close H1, close body, close HTML, right? So that's what we're dealing with there. Then we can go and we can actually look at the pickstyle.css. We open this up, and here's where we have the styling going on. So for the gallery pick, right? So the gallery pick, that's what we're talking about here, right? So the gallery pick, the class, this is what creates those thumbnails I was talking about. So basically for the gallery pick, width is going to be 100 pixels, so it's going to be 100 pixels wide. Height is going to be auto, so it's just going to automatically, it's going to keep the aspect ratio, so the height will be whatever the height is. And then border, what we're going to do is we're going to do 10 pixels solid white. So if we go over and we take a look at my demonstration machine, actually take a look at the website itself. What we can see here is, okay, so the image is 100 pixels wide, basically 100 pixels wide. The height is auto. So that's where you'll notice, like this image here, see it's 100 pixels wide, and because it's on its side, it's a horizontal picture, then the height is much smaller than the other things, because again, it's just dynamically created. And then in order to create the border, what I've done here is in order to create the border, in order to create the padding, basically the gap between the images, what I've done is put it as a 10 pixel solid white border. If we go back and we take a look at the code, then we can do the gallery pick. So we're still using the gallery pick class, but here we're saying hover, and when we hover, we're then going to modify the border. The border is going to stay 10 pixel, it's going to stay solid, but then it's going to be gray. So if I go over to the actual website, again, when I hover over an image, you can see that it's a 10 pixel solid gray border now. And again, you could change opacity here, you could do a whole bunch of different things. I just figured this is an easy way to show you how CSS works dynamically. Then past that, go back and take a look at the code. Then we're going to take a look at the gallery div. So we're talking about the gallery div. That is the div. Basically, that is the box. All of this is inside. So all of this is within that gallery div. So we take a look at it. Basically, what we're seeing here is I've done the position is relative. So whenever you're going to try to center like a box, a div on the screen, you have to make the position relative. The display is going to be a block. then what I'm doing is margin from the left is going to be 10% of the web browser size, and the margin from the right is going to be 10%. So basically, when we take a look at this, it's that whole horseshoes and hand grenades. So this should be about 10% of the entire width of the web browser currently, and this should be 10% of the web browser currently. Again, when I go to shrink it, you will notice then it slowly, those then margins on the side then slowly shrinks as 10% becomes smaller and smaller. Now, again, why I put this border around the div is just so you visually can see why sometimes it doesn't make sense that the images don't seem to be in the center of the screen. But that's basically how that goes. If we go back and we take a look at the code, again, we then finally have that border 2 pix solid black. Honestly, if I was going to be putting this on a production website, I would most likely get rid of that border because, again, it's good to visualize, to understand why things look how they do, but it's also kind of ugly when you're actually looking at it. Then we're going to go down, and basically we're then just dealing with the big pic class for when we're looking at the large image. So for this, we're going to again do the position relative. This is so we can center the image in the middle of the screen. Display is going to be block. It's just going to be a block for the display. Width is going to be 30% of the screen size. So if we go over again, we take a look at the demonstration. When I click on an image, basically what that means is, again, before hover, so this should be approximately 30% of the size of the screen. So as I shrink the screen, you can see that the image shrinks, and as I grow the screen, you can see the image grows. So you could put a defined pixel. You could, just like we did for the gallery, you could say 400 pixels or 300 pixels or 1,000 pixels. I just like the percentage thing because then it makes it a nice little dynamic page for you. If we go and we take a look at the code some more, again, we look at the height is auto, so just it automatically keeps the aspect ratio when you do that. Margin hyphen left auto, margin hyphen right auto. What that is going to do is that is then going to simply center the image in the middle of the screen. The final thing that we're going to do here is then for the big pic class for hover. So when we hover over the image, basically what's going to happen is the width is simply going to go to 80%. The height is going to remain auto, again, to keep that aspect ratio. And that's where we go back and we take a look at the demonstration. That's where you can see here where when I hover over, now the width is 80% of the screen, again, and the height, keeps that aspect ratio so it feels like you're zooming in. You go off the hover and then it gets smaller. And so that's basically what we're looking at with the code here. So again, we have the index.php file. In here, we're going to create the div. So that entire gallery is going to be within this div. We're then going to open up PHP. We are going to use the glob function in order to put the values of all of the file names within the pics folder into an array called file list. We're then going to use the function for each to essentially step through file list. And when it steps through file list, what it's going to do is it's going to print the image out on the screen using the CSS to make it like a gallery type view. And then each one of those images is then going to be a hyperlink. Once you get finished with that, you close the for each, you close the PHP, and then you close everything else out with the HTML. Again, with this is the get. So basically with the hyperlink, you're going to be linking to the script. And when you link to the script, you use question mark. And then the first thing that you do is give a variable name. So we're creating a variable called picture. And then we're setting the value of that variable name to $file name. Basically what then happens, and as you go to gallery script, that all gets sent over to gallery script. Here, what we do is we then are able to get the value of the variable picture that's been sent. And then what we do is we assign that value to the $image variable. Then once we have that, then we can simply print out the image on the basically the bigger image, right? That bigger image view. Then we close out the PHP. Then we simply put a link back to the gallery. Again, don't create dead ends within your web application. And then we close out the HTML and all of that. Finally, again, you have the CSS, and with the CSS here, basically you have the formatting for the gallery pick. So the gallery pick class. So when we're looking at that gallery, what should the gallery pictures look like normally? Then what should the gallery pictures look like when they're hovered over? Then for the entire div, so that entire box the gallery is in, we create a class for that. Again, I put a border here, 2 pixels solid black. That's just a tool for you to understand what's going on. I would probably get rid of that normally. And then finally, again, we create the class and we create the hover event for big pick. So when we're creating those large pictures, and we put all the CSS there. So this is all that's required to create this gallery application. And if you take a look at it, again, I mean, this is a very simple gallery application here, but imagine this with a little bit more CSS. Imagine this, put an actual web page around it in the whole 9 yards. And really, I mean, this is a very, very functional little gallery web application that you can have. Very, very easy for you to use, very easy to work, and a robust little script. So that's how this particular gallery app works. So there you go, easy peasy. You got 3 files, you got 1 folder, you have a whole bunch of pictures, you got a LAMP server, and away you go. Creating a little gallery application like I showed you. For me, honestly, coming up with this demonstration, I don't know, that took me like 30 or 40 minutes. And again, don't get me wrong, what I am showing you is incredibly basic. But, think about it. Create some background colors, improve the CSS a bit, the whole 9 yards. Actually put a whole day into creating this app versus like 30 or 40 minutes. And you can have something that is actually very useful and might be very useful for your organization or your company. Now, if you're lost at all, again, one of the problems you get into when I'm showing you these projects is I've got to show you a lot of code. And one of the issues is like when you get in those quotation marks, like all those quotation marks have got to be there. If you screw up a single one of those quotation marks, everything goes to hell. So if you are confused, go down, take a look at the code that I have on the site and actually read through it. Feel free to copy and paste. Remember, real coders copy and paste. The important thing when you're a coder is not that you write every single line of code, it's that you know what every single line of code does, right? That's what real coders do. So copy and paste the code, read through the code, verify you understand what that code is doing, make modifications as need be, and go from there. So I know with something like this, again, with all those little quotation marks, you would probably rip your hair out if you don't do a copy and paste. So again, go down, grab the code, paste it, play around with it a little bit until you get comfortable. It's one of those. It's like martial arts. Like with coding, with a lot of things in technology, it's like martial art. Like, I remember when my old sensei, my old instructor, they teach you how to hit. This is how you hit. And it was like the weirdest thing, like for like 6 months, you'd be like learning how to hit. And it would always feel weird and it would always feel wrong. And it was always like, that's not right. And then there would just be one day you get in the sparring ring and somebody comes at you and you just, and you're like, that's why we do, right? And then after that point, you can just freaking slam people and it's no big deal. The same thing is true with coding, right? You sit there and you look at the delimiters, you look at the double quotation marks, you look at all that stuff. And again, you will lose your mind when you're starting out. But after a certain point, you're just like, okay, this quotation marks, the double quotation marks is for this and the single quotation marks is for this. And then you just start seeing the lines and it's not nearly as bad as you originally think it is. So again, practice, play. I'm giving you these projects. I'm giving you the code. Do not simply copy and paste the code and do nothing else. Copy and paste the code, play around with it, modify it, change things, tweak it, right? Do all that kind of stuff so that you feel comfortable with it. So anyways, again, I think it's a cool little web app, and we're going to be doing a lot more projects like this going into the future. So with that, as always, I enjoyed doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. If you like the content that I create, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.